Good evening. Welcome to Who's Right. I'm Sandra McFadden, and we're at the fundraiser for Senator Luther Olson of the 14th District, and our honored guest is Glenn Grothman, our senator from Wisconsin. Hi, Glenn.
Glad to be on the show.
Thank you. Nice to have you. You know, Glenn, throughout this recall race, I have interviewed all the recall senators, most of them at least, and one thing that I've noticed, it's very obvious that there's a tight, really pact between all of them. The senators are really, they stick together, they stand together. No one is alone in this ordeal. And can you speak to that for me?
We've been through everything together. We've been through the protests, we've been through all the angry phone calls, the obscenity-laced phone calls in the middle of the night. And when you all go through that sort of thing, I think it does kind of form a certain degree of a bond.
It's a bond, but it kind of, I think it goes beyond that. I think you're there for one another, do or die. I think you would be...
Well, I think that's true. And I think it's because we're doing something so unique here in the state of Wisconsin. I've been in the legislature now for 18 years. And in the 18 years I've been there, we have never taken votes like we've taken in the last 6 months. People are frequently critical of government and politicians and saying they're only worried about the next election. They always use weasel words, this and that sort of thing. Well, I'll tell you, that's not what happened here in the last 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
We were faced with a fiscal crisis here in the state of Wisconsin, just as we have a national fiscal crisis, and we took on that fiscal crisis head on. Whenever you say no to people in government, and the reason we have a crisis, not only here but in Washington, is too many politicians have not said no, you get somebody mad. And a lot of people are mad right now, and these are the people who caused the recalls to go forward. But all 6 of the senators under recall have rung the doorbells, they've heard the angry people, they've been subject to very misleading radio and TV ads. So they've all kind of been through the same thing, and nobody likes to be criticized to that regard, particularly lied about, on TV and radio. So I can see how this bond would develop, and kind of the pride in genuinely doing a great and right thing of national significance.
Right. So what you did is you didn't just take a vote. You all went out on a limb and took a vote.
Well, I think it was an easy vote because it was the right vote. But I will tell you, when that vote was taken, there were a lot of people who said, my political career could be over. But for the good of the state and the good of the country, I'm going to take that vote. And it's not often you see politicians talk that way.
Okay. So you all knew what you were doing, and you did it together.
Absolutely.
And you knew what the consequences would be.
Absolutely. I mean, there was talk of the next round of elections, recall or otherwise, being elections that we've never seen before. We knew there were sleazy national union bosses who would focus on the Wisconsin legislature. And we knew some Republicans could very easily lose their job because they were doing the right thing for the state. But unlike other times since I've been in Madison, which people say, well, we can't do this, it's going to make my re-election more difficult, I want to make sure I get re-elected. This time it was, I don't care if I get re-elected or not, we've got a crisis in the state of Wisconsin. We've got to do the right thing.
I see. So that's what I'm seeing. That's the bond that I'm talking about. It goes beyond words, really, and it shows in all of what you've done. It's a character, mark of character.
I think it is. You know, it's always easy as a politician to say yes to the spending crowd, and it's very rare that anybody comes in that building and doesn't get the money they're looking for. And this time, some people didn't. It's not going to result in any dramatic cut in services in Wisconsin. Quite frankly, I wish we would cut some of these services. But it's not going to. But some people are upset because of a little downtick in their paycheck.
Yeah, well, it shows in Wisconsin, because in June, half the private sector jobs in the United States showed up in Wisconsin.
Well, it's not surprising. I think Scott Walker has set a tone. I mean, obviously we passed some bills, but bills don't result in a job showing up the next day. But we've clearly set the pace and said that, unlike in the past, Wisconsin really is open for business. You know, we're going to try to change the Department of Natural Resources, which is kind of a business-hating organization. We're going to stand up to the teachers' union, which is collectively very anti-business. And we're going to say, business is number one. It's fine that people work for government, but it's business who creates the wealth that makes our state go forward. And I think that message has been received by the business community, and the business owners I talk to are very enthused because of the message they hear coming out of Madison.
How are you going to win the teachers over onto your side?
I think over time, they're going to see the world doesn't change. I mean, the teachers, as will I, will take an 8 or 9% cut in their take-home pay. But I think the union is trying to scare them and say that, you know, in 2 years they're going to be making minimum wage, or they're going to be out of a job, or what have you. And they're going to find out that this time next year and this time 2 years from now, their life will not have changed any more than hopefully my life has changed, other than that they're going to get a paycheck that's 8 or 9% less than it was before. And let's be honest, there's so many people in the state of Wisconsin who had a paycheck 100% less than they were used to because they were laid off or lost their job.
Completely.
That even though, you know, nobody likes to have a lower paycheck, to have a minor downtick of 8 or 9% and still have your job, you're in pretty good shape.
You wrote an essay called Collective Bargaining Repeal, the best thing that ever happened to Wisconsin schools. I thought it was very complete, and I liked it a lot. Can you kind of give us an overall take on that?
Oh, sure. I think people are not aware of the stranglehold the most extreme members of the teachers' union had on our schools. And when you have a strong union, kind of encouraging people maybe to teach to the contract, maybe protecting the worst or the mediocre members of the profession, it kind of dampens that whole organization. And just as a very strong, out-of-control union can force a business down or force a business to make bad products, I think one of the major reasons why we have seen a downtrend in Wisconsin's test scores has been the strength of the teachers' union. We all know it's very difficult to get rid of a bad teacher in the state of Wisconsin, and while you can do it, it can take years of documentation. Let's face it, a child's only in second grade once, and that's a very important grade.
Right.
If you have a bad second grade teacher, it shouldn't take 3 years of documentation and have another 75 kids get a bad second grade teacher. You should be able to remove that teacher tomorrow.
Right.
If you have a teacher who's just teaching good enough, but maybe using outdated, liberal, 70s education methodology, and you're a superintendent or a principal who wants to have that teacher teach in a new research-based way, which is better for the kids, you can now do it. In the past, you just had to put up with that teacher riding out the string for 10 or 20 years, not doing the best they could. Another thing that happens is under these teachers' contracts, it says how long you have to be in school in a given day. You may have a contract saying that an elementary school teacher only has to be in the school for 7.5 hours. Let's say you want to have a conference with a child's parents after school, and the principal says, you know, Johnny's parents can't get off work till 4 o'clock and you hang around late. I think a lot of the good teachers would hang around late. There's some teachers who are just going to say, I teach to the contract. The contract says I can leave by, 3:20. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And obviously that sort of attitude is bad. Not to mention, collective bargaining results in a huge waste of money. For example, health insurance. It's widely reported that right now, many teachers had teachers' union health insurance owned by the company, owned by the teachers' union.
Mm-hmm.
And you may have another company who can offer almost the identical insurance for maybe $3,000 or less per teacher. That
Amazing.
can save $1 million in a school district, but we were finding in some school districts the teachers' union, run by extremists or misguided teachers, or maybe just teachers who didn't care, would say, I don't care if it costs an additional $1 million to have teachers' union insurance. I don't care if it means we have to get rid of the gifted and talented program, or get rid of the middle school orchestra, or get rid of the golf team, whatever. I want to waste that money. Well, now finally we're going to put the money in the schools to benefit the children, rather than what the leaders of the teachers' union want. So for the first time in years in the state of Wisconsin, the kids are going to be number one. And hopefully the law does not change. You've got to remember in these recall elections, there are a lot of Democrats out there who want to go back to the old system, who want to say, I want to put the kids second. I want to prop up that teachers union health insurance company, and if it means raising taxes or getting rid of the gifted talented program, so be it. Now, it's kind of scary that there are people so unethical that they would run on that platform, but there are people out there like a Jennifer Schilling or a Fred Clark. They'll do that. They don't care. They want the title, and they don't care at all about the kids.
Do you think the average person actually understands that?
No, we try to get it out, and that's why I'm talking on your show tonight.
That's
the average person doesn't understand. You've done a horrible job of explaining it. The average person does not understand what is at stake here, and that's why I'm on the show now.
Thank you. Yes, and that's why I'm asking these questions. I mean, it's ludicrous. It absolutely is. It's ludicrous. When the session of the legislation started work in January, Wisconsin was a high-tax, very low-growth state. What have the Republicans done exactly to turn everything around in the state of Wisconsin?
I think more it's psychological, because you don't have change that quick. We've changed the tort climate, which is an indication, again, that we're pro-business. We're not going to let every little goof file a lawsuit. We've instituted some tax credits, which are good for trying to encourage businesses to expand in the state of Wisconsin. We recently implemented tax credits that, as a practical matter, will make manufacturing income tax free in the state of Wisconsin, which is my favorite thing that we've done. I think the fact that we balanced this budget, unlike Illinois, by not raising taxes, sends the message that we're a little more responsible here in Wisconsin than some of our neighbors.
Well, those are some of the things, but I mean, we've had such a turnaround. There must be more that's been done that is significant.
You change the regulatory climate, you change the business climate, and you have people in charge who clearly are prepared to do more. I mean, it's not like in the past where you have this rhetoric, you kind of allow business to keep their own money. Or you have to hire a lawyer and spend months and months for permits before you can put an addition on your building. I think in the past, the bureaucracy in Madison thought that way. Like we were doing you a favor to allow you to do business in the state of Wisconsin. I mean, it's appalling. You can tell right now, not only from the statements of Governor Walker, but from legislative leadership, from his cabinet, that they want to help business. They realize that money does not come into the state unless we're selling something or producing something. Either we have a strong agriculture area, a tourism area, most importantly, manufacturing. That's what brings money in our state. You know, I know school teachers. I like school teachers. You know, we need police. We need firemen. Maybe social workers. I don't know.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yes, I think we need some.
I don't know. Maybe. But they are not bringing money into the state.
No, they aren't.
To bring money into the state, we need a strong business climate. We need strong tourism. We need, above all, strong manufacturing. We need a strong agriculture sector. And I think in the past, I'll give a quote I read from a book the other day, a Ronald Reagan quote. It could apply to Wisconsin, but it was a national quote.
Okay.
He said, America is supposed to be a nation with a government, not a government with a nation. And I think too much of our bureaucracy has kind of acted as if the world revolves around the government and will allow a few businesses to exist. That's not the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
The people are supposed to be free to do what they want, and they realize you need a government for some things. And I think we're kind of beginning to turn that around.
I see. And certainly Governor Walker is like the best example of a salesman for business that I've ever seen. I mean, he welcomes business with open arms and is aggressively pursuing new business into the state.
Well, I think he wants to change the climate. And, you know,
but he is like a person that has the personality of someone who is welcoming it and wanting it and not ashamed to say so.
Right. I think that's true. And it's not what he says, because let's face it, I don't think there's a governor out there who says we don't want business in our state.
Right.
But it's his actions that make his words count.
Yes, yes.
I mean, the budget, a variety of bills that were passed in January, kind of deregulating a little bit, his cabinet appointees. I mean, all of that is what sends the message.
Yes. And he's got Rebecca Cleefish out there really actively bringing in new business.
Rebecca's tremendous.
Yeah.
It's a very good thing she's here, and she's another example of somebody who understands that business has to be king. It's neat that I get to work for the government, but I'm not producing anything. I'm not making a car. I'm not building a house. I know that the only reason I have a car and live in a nice condo is because somebody else built those things.
Yes.
That's the precious thing that we have in our society. They have to be king.
Yes.
And in the past, the people who ran Madison didn't understand that. They thought they were doing him a favor by letting him build the car.
It's bringing in the business. That's what we have to keep doing.
Right. Have to realize that they're king. And it's a subset, part of a larger thing. The question is whether we're a free country or not. I was at a hearing the other day, not a big business-related thing, but dealing with buildings on lakes. And it was very apparent that the DNR kind of thought that nobody should be able to build anything on a lake. And if you did put something on your house, they can horse around for a year and make you get all sorts of plans and studies and stuff before you go ahead. In other words, they're kind of opposed to freedom. A lot of bureaucrats in the government hate the idea of freedom. They think we're living in Cuba. And it's up to Governor Walker and his cabinet to straighten out these well-paid bureaucrats and let them know this is not Cuba. It's a free country. Unless you have a really, really good reason, you can be free to do whatever you want in this country. Free to build whatever you want. Free to hire whoever you want. And that's the mindset we got to get out there.
Yeah. And we are doing that. The governor is doing that, right. And it shows within the legislature. So, recall elections, back to the recall elections, we believe that we are going to prevail in the recall.
I don't know. It's very scary. If you happen to be listening to this, if you live in the district of a Luther Olson or a Randy Hopper or a Dan Kapanke or Alberta Darling or Sheila Harsdorf, you have to get out there and make sure they prevail.
Yes.
Our country can go under. All great countries eventually do go under, and they go under because you have a majority of people who think money's for free. And they just think they can forever and ever take money from people, and that the train's never going to stop. And it's very scary. Because there are Senate districts around the state in which perhaps the majority of voters are either misinformed or a bunch of infantile children, not to be too redundant there, who think that there's a bottomless pit of money and we can just keep pounding business and they can have well-paid jobs forever in the bureaucracy. And I'm afraid those people may win these elections. It's very scary.
Oh, the scariest thing in the world is the people that think that they don't have to vote in elections. That's the scariest thing in the world.
Even more scary is people who think the Republicans did the wrong thing.
Well,
are these people out of their mind? But they are out of their mind. They think there's a bottomless pit of money. Like, give me more, give me more.
Yeah.
I'm not working overtime. I'm not taking a second job. Give me more, give me more. Right, those people are out there.
From where? From the government. Well,
the government.
Where's the government going to get it?
Right. You know what they say to me? They say, we should get more money from business.
Right.
That's their problem. Here we're trying to attract business, and they're saying, look, I want more money from business. Can't you raise tax on business?
That's my very question. The very question is, if we do not prevail, what happens?
Well, it means probably another round of elections in another year. But of course, politicians, as in any occupation, you look what's successful and not successful. There's some politicians of integrity who will keep trying to do the right thing, but other politicians, put their finger up to the wind. Oh, looks like you can't say no to the spenders. I guess I better be on the side of the spenders. And then our country is sunk. And these recalls are important not only for Wisconsin, but nationwide, because our country's got a huge problem. I think there are a lot of smart people who don't think our country can make it out of it. We're already so in debt, and there's so many people living off the government, and they don't understand that not everybody can live off the government. And by that, like I said, I'm living off the government. I'm not being overly critical of people who work for the government. I live off the government. I'm conscious of it. But I know not everybody can do this.
Well, no, and you serve a purpose in trying to lead others in helping them to get out and get into the private sector and energize the government and try to build up the government. That is your purpose in trying to lead.
Well, we're trying to educate people what's going on here.
Right.
And I hope we are. I don't think the Republican Party is doing overall a good enough job, but we have to explain to the public what's at stake here.
Right.
Not only for Wisconsin,
someone has
but
to
nationwide.
do that in the government. Someone has to do that job.
Right. Everything is not all peaches and cream. We got big problems here.
Right, right. But not everybody can do that job. Most people have to go out and work, and if enough people aren't working in the private sector, there's never going to be enough money for us to live on.
We've got to have a lot more people working in the private sector, because that's the productive part of the economy.
Exactly.
That's where food comes from. That's where manufacturing comes from. That's where the things that make us a wealthy society come from. Not to mention, if you work in the private sector, you have more freedom than in government. One of the frustrating things, or scary things, that I have found out going through these recalls is the almost terror that's going on in our schools and universities, particularly our schools, for people who want to vote Republican. I mean, it's like you're living in Cuba or something. People being ostracized. I mean, the meanness that goes on in government, which is another reason why I want more people in private sector employment. In private sector employment, because they only care about are you doing a good job or not, they're more broad-minded people.
Right.
You know, they don't get so upset if somebody votes Republican or Democrat.
Right.
It's not like the unhealthy situation you have in government where you have this narrow-mindedness way of thinking in which you're ostracized if you say voted for Scott Walker.
Right.
So that's another reason we want more people working in the private sector. We believe in freedom and open-minded, free flow of ideas that you get in the private sector that's much more rare in government.
But the truth is, there's many jobs, many places that you work where you cannot say who you are voting for.
Where is that outside of government?
University.
That is the government.
That's...
The university is horrible, but that's the government. Right, you work for the university, it's kind of like going to work in Cuba. You better, not for everybody, but there is a...
Private universities aren't that way, but...
I wouldn't say that. There are a lot of very liberal private universities right now. It's a problem we have in the education system right now.
Yeah.
Very, very left-wing. I think we have a fight going on in America between what I'll call the atheistic socialist left and the freedom-loving, I'll say the America is not entirely, but primarily, a Christian freedom-loving people. And the more atheistic socialist side of things has a stranglehold right now on our universities and to a lesser degree our K-12 system.
Yes, it does, unless it is particularly a conservative university that you're attending. Yeah. Right,
but overall, I don't even want to say maybe K-12, exaggerating a little, but not much. I think there is a left-wing tilt and not explaining enough the principles that our country was built on.
Absolutely. And it's scary.
It is.
And that's where we send our children to get educated, so they can grow up and become a nice liberal.
Absolutely. It's something we've got to do something about. There's no reason we have to pay for this and put up with this nonsense, right?
No.
I mean, it keeps getting worse and people just accept it. They shouldn't accept it.
No.
People are like sheep. They're accepting this. Well, I got to send Johnny off to UW.
What are they going to do about it? Because are they going to lose their job over it?
Well, we have to take a little bit more control of these universities. You know, they're all big on diversity.
How are you going to do that? You're going to lose your job?
Well, we're going to have to find a way to do it. We're going to have to find a way to force these universities to be a little more open-minded. It's appalling that we subsidize universities that are so slanted.
Absolutely, but I don't know who is going to stand up and do it, because no one's going to risk losing their job.
Well, we just had over 70 Republican legislators risk losing their job for doing the right thing.
Yes,
so
I
don't know. We have to get other people willing to risk losing their job to get the education establishment back on the straight and narrow. There's no reason why you pick the department, the social work department, the law school, the political science department, the journalism department, the education school. There's no reason these schools should be 7, 80, 90, 95% left-wing.
Absolutely not.
The state is about 50-50. You would think it would represent the state as a whole. I mean, these people, they think because about half the population is women, we should fight till half the faculty is women. They'll say because X% of the population is minority, we should fight until X% of the faculty is my
Yes,
right.
that's
well,
true.
I'll tell you this. If about half the population is conservative, we should fight until about half the members of the faculty of the university are conservative. Isn't that so?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you
I think
more.
so. It should represent the state as a whole. And that's not something that really matters. So I think it's a fight we ought to take on. Absolutely.
Okay, I think you should champion it.
Well, I may do that.
It's the first thing you should take up in the legislature.
Right? We shouldn't let this liberal nonsense go on forever. You look at the crummy court decision that Justice Sumi came up with here in Madison. That's ridiculous. I'll guarantee you the majority of the faculty of the UW Law School was applauding her. That's ridiculous.
I can't argue with you at all. I can only agree with you. And I want to say that you are probably right. You're on the right show of Who's Right,
Okay,
Senator
well, I'm glad to be
Grothman.
on Who's Right.
And you are right in my book. Now the question is, do you agree? So if you do or do not, let us know at whosright.org, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.